In the 3 episodes of this section, we've been discussing where vision comes from and the power of a team approach to creating vision. Last time I also spent some time discussing universal laws at work in a system. I would like to conclude this second section by focusing on how we can grow and learn together as an organization. Okay, I've taken a bit of a risk last time by getting a bit into the weeds of how a system organization actually functions behind the scenes and how this affects the organism of a local church and ministry. Most of us don't really want to know how the sausages are made. After all, it can be kind of messy. But trust me, to have an effective ministry, somebody somewhere better know how to do the messy organizational stuff. It just doesn't happen by chance or because we have a great prayer meeting. Again, if you're following along, we're currently on pages 16 to 19 of the coaching guide. See, effective leaders know these principles and have learned how to adapt their leadership to address the issues created by a group. I know this does not sound all that spiritual, but my experience has been that while we have taught leaders how to preach, teach, and the more spiritual activities, we usually spend much less time, if any, helping them understand human and organizational dynamics. But it's these very concepts that they will wrestle with for most of their ministries. And after all, what's more spiritual than right relationships? The reality is that the church grows, often unintentional side effects are produced in the structure itself, or what I've been referring to as the wineskin. It is these very things that then begin to slow the growth. See, the common approach at that point is to push harder to maintain the growth, but this often results in further decline. If there's something wrong at a fundamental organizational level, longer, more forceful preaching or even casting new visions merely deflect from the real problems. They seldom solve the core issue. The key is in this scenario is to learn how to remove the factors that are limiting growth, not necessarily working harder or manipulating the members. We have to understand that growth occurs in cycles and there needs to be times of balance to assimilate the growth. We'll discuss this in more depth in our next episode when we look at the organizational life cycle. Another common error for leadership is to just deal with the symptoms. We often assume that by dealing with the symptoms, the problem will go away. We need to be aware that some solutions only deal with the symptoms of the problem, not the fundamental causes. Often these underlying problems are difficult to deal with and are unpopular, and so it's easy to deal only with the symptoms that they produce. See, these immediate fixes can cause the symptoms to go away for a while, but they eventually reappear. Even worse, only dealing with the symptoms creates a cycle of dependence upon quick fixes. This is the cycle of all addictions. To deal with this natural tendency requires a long-term view and developing a shared vision of the members.
This series is based upon our MCNet coaching and ministry guides. There are basically 2 parts to the series, 12 episodes that cover the 5 sections of the coaching guide and 18 episodes that cover the 8 workshops of the ministry guide. As a team, we have had the opportunity to serve in various parts of the world over the last decades using these materials to equip leaders and coach ministry teams throughout our ministry coaching network. This leadership team coaching in episodes 1 to 12 are intended for the core leadership team and cover big picture issues that affect the whole ministry. Here, issues regarding sharing vision, developing healthy culture, bringing about change, and multiplication strategies are discussed. There's a playbook at the end of each of these first 12 coaching episodes, which serves as a guide to help implement these church health and growth tools. These first 12 episodes then coincide with the ministry team workshops in episodes 13 to 30, which are designed to equip every member as they serve in the body. You can also check out our Christian Leadership Institute training program. This is a unique approach to ministerial training based on a competency-focused mentorship. The free materials for this series, as well as the coaching and ministry guides, are available from the links in the description box below. Just as many others have, we are sure you will find our other Leadership Matters podcast series helpful for you and your ministry.
So as we wrap up this episode, let me offer some steps we can take to make sure that the wineskins of our ministries remain flexible so that we can be vessels of this good news in our generation. In the organizational management, we talk about being an organization that has a learning environment. What we mean by this is that the leadership and the members are committed to change and growth. As a church, this means we maintain a focus on our ultimate goal of fulfilling our calling. Churches that have the mindset of a learning environment typically have certain leadership attributes. First, they clarify what's important, which means that leadership have to know what is important to them as a team. It is also essential that we see and accept the current reality and not live under the illusion that things are as we hope. Instead, we have to take them as they are. We must understand our own personal vision and calling and identify the real vision, not just our goals and purposes. See, to have a healthy, growing church, it will be important to live with creative tension caused by the gap of the way things are, our reality, and the way things can become, or the vision. This means being committed to the truth and being willing to root out any self-deception. We have to realize that we cannot force change, but we can only create the climate within which others will embrace a new vision of the future. Okay, with these general principles in mind, what are some of the specific ways we can evaluate the current state of affairs in our church? After all, one of the responsibilities of leadership is to know the group we are leading and be aware of what the needs are, what their fears are, and what they need in order to move forward. While some leaders are intuitive and do this naturally, most of us need to learn the skills necessary in order to assess where the church is at and what needs to be done so that it continues to move in a forward direction. To that end, let me wrap up this episode by sharing 7 steps that can help us assess the health of our church and how change can be implemented. The first issue is to determine what members think is the purpose of the church. This is pretty foundational. We may discover that there's a discrepancy between what is actually said and what is happening. The second key issue is to determine how the church or organization is set up. How is the work divided? A tool to assist in this is to have members write an organizational chart and how they think the boxes interconnect. In this exercise, each member's perception is more important than the official chain of command is on paper. Is the structure fulfilling the purpose of the organization? Third, how is conflict managed? Or how do the various individuals and groups relate to one another? If relationships are strained, the organization will be ineffective. By analyzing various sets of relationships, such as the pastor with the staff or the staff with ministry leaders, we can determine the level of interdependence between the groups. What is the overall quality of the relationships? Bear in mind that usually relationships are just part of the problem. They are seldom the only factor. We also need to look at the purpose and structure of the ministry. The fact is that churches can have good relationships and still not be effective in accomplishing their goal. Fourth, even in a church where rewards tend to be eternal in nature, people still tend to be involved in activity due to some sort of reward system. Okay, that might be a bit too honest, but it's true nonetheless. The reality is that members do what they do because they see some sort of benefit for themselves. Perhaps as simple as being able to use their gifts. But hopefully these are the eternal benefit or reasons, but it's unrealistic to think they are also not motivated by temporal ones, just like the rest of us. It is important to determine what the extrinsic and intrinsic incentives are within the church. These are often not formal, but rather are the behaviors that are rewarded. And what behavior is affirmed and what negative behavior is not confronted? Fifth, we need to determine who or what group is keeping all the pieces together. Leadership is essential within the organization and needs to be clearly defined. Regardless of the positions, it is essential to determine who are really the influencers and responsible for getting things done. See, every team has leaders who coordinate things. Leaders need to be given feedback as to what their impact is within the organization. Using anonymous surveys, observations, questionnaires, etc. are ways of assessing this. It is key to determine if the behaviors of an organization are in line with the stated objectives and purposes of that organization. And 6, what helpful systems are in place in order to coordinate between the various departments, the relationships, the functions, and the groups in the church. See, this relates to communication, decision-making process, and the means used to make connections between the various departments. In order to be effective, we'll have to be intentional to put these systems of connections in place. And finally, we need to also determine what the external influences are that are affecting the organization or the church. What is affecting why the church is doing what it is doing? This could be the greater society or specific dynamics in our local community and so on. But we'll cover this in more depth in future episodes and in some of the workshops. But hopefully you're beginning to see the importance of knowing how the sausages were made. We want to see our churches become communities of reproducing ministries. Yet this high and lofty goal often devolves into a four-letter word, work. W-O-R-K. As leaders, it is our job to do this work so that the community of believers that we serve will be healthy and effective in fulfilling Matthew 28:19-20. Doing this involves change as we move the church from where it is and where it needs to go. Something we'll discuss in our next episode. So as we wrap up this episode, let's look at the playbook for this section. To begin with, here are a couple questions to consider. As a leadership team, how can you help each other develop the necessary attributes in order to develop a learning environment? Using the 7-step assessment, assess the health of your own church. Now, for each of the sections of this coaching series, we provide ministry team workshops which are designed to help anyone serving in the body apply these principles. For this section, the workshops are Developing Others 2, or Mentoring 201, and Team Building, which you can view in episodes 18-21. This is a follow-up to the principles of developing others through a mentoring relationship, as well as then how to develop effective teams. The goal is to reproduce healthy leaders who will then be able to build healthy teams and reproduce healthy ministries. Now, this is only an introductory episode to mentoring, so for the full workshop, check out my Mentoring Intelligence podcast series, which covers the content Developing Others 1 and Developing Others 2 workshops. There's also a link to our First Team podcast, which discusses principles of a healthy marriage relationship. See, various resources are also available in this section, including a vision assessment, a system analysis tool, as well as our extensive church health and effectiveness assessment. It is available in several languages and will be the basis for many of the workshops ahead. Our pathways of implementation this time includes instructions on how to administer the church health and effectiveness assessment within your church or organization, and the corresponding workshops, which are available as digital copies. I've also provided a guideline page which we have used to integrate the coaching sections in the workshops. The elliptical diagram explains the flow of the coaching sessions in the workshops and how they fit together. Now, the blue one illustrates how this material can be used within existing churches, and the brownish one for establishing new ministries. You can get links to all of these resources in the description box below. In our next section, we'll discuss the change process and introduce 2 tools that will help you evaluate your own ministry as you move forward. But before that, I would suggest you listen to the 2 workshops in this section, Team Building and Developing Others, through mentoring, and those are in episodes 18-21.